Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Derrick Van Orden of Hager City is a Republican running in the 3rd Congressional District. Mr. Van Orden, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
When I interview congressional candidates, here's my first question. What's at stake in the November 3 election?
Well, I think the choice between the parties and the candidates has never been so stark, certainly in my lifetime. We're at the point where people are seriously discussing defunding the police. I've lived and worked in ungoverned spaces before, and we do not want that here in America. We're having these programs that are written for trillions and trillions of dollars that are putting not our grandchildren in debt, our great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren in debt. So, and they're making people, unfortunately, more beholden on the government than I think we should be as American citizens. So this election truly is incredibly important to make sure that we can, at a minimum, provide the same types of opportunities to our children that we had growing up. And that's a big deal.
Well, you're talking there about the debt that has gone from about 22 to potentially 27 trillion with a T. Right. So have our leaders been willing to set aside the debate and consideration of the increasing debt to focus on the short-term federal packages to help us deal with COVID?
Yes, but it's not a blanket thing. To say that the government has been spending money like a drunken sailor is an insult to drunken sailors, because they're inventing money, and we can't do this any longer. It is simply unsustainable to continue to spend these trillions of dollars that we don't have. You have to be able to identify what is right and good in order to take care of a problem. But when you're talking about, you're talking about these programs that are providing $1,200 of American taxpayers' money to illegal aliens. That's written in the package. You know who signed off on that twice? Ron Kind, in the HEROES Act. They tried to remit that portion of the bill, and Ron voted against that also. So he's voted for that twice. That's not appropriate. $25 million for the Kennedy Center. What does that have to do with COVID relief? So when you start throwing around these bills with the T on them, people are sliding hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of things into these bills that have nothing to do with the purpose, which is to help us get through this crisis together as a nation. That's why we need to absolutely, number one, we need a balanced budget amendment. It's got to be an amendment. I'm all behind that. And then also we have to make sure that we get a clean bill passed that is laser focused on helping the American citizens and businesses get back up, and put all this other, for Pete's sakes, the Green New Deal is essentially written into these packages for Nancy Pelosi and Ron Kind. He helps write those, and it's inexcusable.
Do we need another COVID aid package passed by Washington? You're well aware of the back and forth negotiations. The U.S. House passed the bill, $3.3 trillion. The president said we're done negotiating. Now there's some talks going on. Do we need another COVID relief package out of Washington?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer, because what we need is Washington to allow people to get back to work. And if that means another PPP program, which was by far, in a way, the most successful portion of this, the Paycheck Protection Program, if that needs to happen, then let's do that again. Do we need to have another bridging mechanism for some of these businesses that are running short on capital now to make sure that they can maintain their doors open? If that's the case, which very well may be, then we need another bill. But if we just want to start throwing money around that we don't have, which is what it seems like is taking place, then that's an inappropriate expenditure of American taxpayers' dollars. So we have to make sure that our businesses are able to stay open to employ people, because Western Wisconsinites, we're hard-working people. I'm a retired Navy SEAL senior chief. I am a tradesman. I work with my hands, and I've been providing for myself since I was 16, and my family since I got married 27 years ago. We like to do that as Americans. I think that DC's gotten a little spend happy here.
Wouldn't a balanced amendment, though, hurt the Defense Department budget? I mean, if you have a balanced budget amendment, wouldn't, in effect, all federal programs have to take some cut, including the Pentagon, sir?
Okay.
You're fine with that. Okay.
If it works, it works. If we have to collectively tighten our belt as American citizens, and that certainly does not mean that does not mean the $4 trillion tax increase that Joe Biden and Ron Kind and Nancy Pelosi are all behind. I disagree with that completely. But if we have to really take a hard look at all of these programs so that we can collectively come out on the other side better, then that's what we do. There should be, other than Social Security, Medicaid for our elderly folks, there's really not a lot of things that are sacrosanct. And I know people don't think that a retired Navy SEAL would say that, but when you have programs with trillions of dollars worth of budget, you're going to have a tremendous amount of waste in there.
Agriculture is an anchor of the 3rd Congressional District.
You bet.
We have farmers going out of business. I don't need to tell you that. So if you're going to Congress, what program would you put forth to save agriculture, to help farmers in the 3rd?
Well, first and foremost, we would make sure that the USMCA is fully implemented. So Ron Kind and Nancy Pelosi sat on USMCA for so long that we lost over 840 dairy farms here in Wisconsin. So that's inexcusable. The reason they did that is because they were chasing after the impeachment debacle, and they refused to get the USMCA through. Ron Kind is quoted as saying Nancy Pelosi is the gatekeeper for this. So what we have to do for our farmers is make sure that they have a level playing field on the international realm so that they can get their products out to everybody in the world. The Wisconsin farmer is the best farmer in the world. It's really fun to be here because I say that with pride and it's true. We can compete with anybody in the nation and around the world as long as we have a level playing field. So that's what I would do. I would absolutely make sure that USMCA continues to be implemented and make sure that we always put our farmers, manufacturers, and other businesses in the state of Wisconsin above politics. Ron Kind has been putting politics above these things for over 20 years. And it's quite frankly shameful. I'm not going to do that. I live on a hobby farm. I live in a township on purpose. I know what it's like to have a limited amount of resources and know what it's like to have to really focus on what you're doing in relationship to a budget and running a business. Ron does not.
You referred earlier to calls to defund the police. That conjures up the whole debate over policing reforms that we've seen nationally and even in Kenosha.
Yep.
Are there any national policing reforms that you think should be enacted, sir?
Well, let me tell you something about this. That you can't enact any reforms or really have a conversation about doing anything unless you come to the table honestly. And this is going to shock you if you haven't heard this before. Ron Kind had a conference call with our 18 sheriffs in our district. We have 18 whole and partial counties. And he said that he would never vote for a bill that removed qualified immunity from police officers because he was a prosecutor and he knows what that means. If you remove qualified immunity from police officers, you are essentially defunding the police. And I'll give you an example. In one of our counties, they normally have 100 to 125 applicants per sheriff deputy opening. Last year, they had 5.
Wow.
You remove qualified immunity, that's going to go to 0. So Ron Kind promised these men and women, my sheriff is Nancy Hovey, she's awesome, and said I'd never do this because I get it. But what he failed to mention was 8 days before that phone call, he co-sponsored the bill that removed qualified immunity from all police officers on a federal level. Went into that phone call knowing that he was going to lie to him because it would not be a popular thing to do. Well, I will never do that. We have to have an honest discussion with everybody. All parties involved have to come to the table clean. And Ron has failed to do that on a regular basis. I am not a fan of a national police force. And that's what you're really talking about when you say, should there be national level reforms for policing? That means that people in Washington, D.C. are telling people in Sparta, Wisconsin, how they're going to police their citizens. And it never works out. We look at central governmental control, especially when you're talking about law enforcement and internal intelligence operations, and it's always been a disaster. That's what the Stasi was. We need to stay away from that. The closer to the problem set you are as a peace officer, the more readily you understand what the needs of your community are. And you should be able to be empowered to act on that, because the overwhelming vast majority of our police officers, men and women, and first responders, and the forgotten folks are our corrections officers. The vast overwhelming majority of those folks really have the community's best interest in mind. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing that job.
1 week after the election, the Supreme Court is going to hear the case that could result in throwing out the Affordable Care Act. If the court voted to throw out the Affordable Care Act, what is your plan B for health care?
Well, first and foremost, let me make this super clear. Ron Kind has been going around just doing bald-faced lies about me and my positions on pre-existing conditions. I'm a 100% service-connected disabled veteran. I have children with very serious pre-existing conditions. Donald Trump was just diagnosed with COVID-19. These are all pre-existing conditions. So when Ron Kind goes out and says, I'm going to remove pre-existing conditions from any medical programs, that is a flat out absolute political lie. And I think he should probably fire his fact checker, because if they had looked into that, they wouldn't have made that foolish assertion. So first and foremost, pre-existing conditions are covered, or I'm not going to even talk to anybody about a bill. I'm just not going to. But we have to understand, I was just speaking to someone last night. We had an event there. They work for a major manufacturer here. Their deductible went from under $400 annually to $9,400 since Obamacare got into play. Here's something else which is interesting about Ron. Ron was going around, and he's quoted in multiple different newspapers, multiple different internet sites, including the Huffington Post, which we know is not a bastion of conservative thought, saying that if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. So Ron, that was voted the largest political lie for that entire year. And Ron's quoted over and over and over saying, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. And of all people who should have known that Obamacare would be a disaster, it's Ron Kind, because he has a master's in economics. And that just simply does not work. So Obamacare has got to get out. We have to have a program that covers pre-existing conditions, and we have to allow, we have to get the government out of healthcare and allow these prices to be lowered through competition, through lowering of pharmaceuticals, and through price transparency. Here's something also, let me tell you about Ron. In his top 5 donors, he's got pharmaceutical companies, medical insurance companies, a hospital consortium, and regular insurance companies. They've paid him millions and millions of dollars over the years. You know why? Because they've made billions of dollars off of Obamacare. So again, he's playing politics with your healthcare and then lying about it. That's inexcusable.
Let's talk about immigration. Number one, do we still need the wall? And what do you tell DACA young adults who were brought here as children, please?
Right. Wall, yes, absolutely. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country. It's that simple. The way that our immigration system is set up right now, it's almost designed for fault. This is what I would propose. Being in the military, you do a workup for about, if you're in the SEAL teams, a year and a half, and then you deploy for 6 months overseas, and then you go back home, right? So why can't there be an immigration system that is designed off of that model? So you're in, let's just say, Guatemala, and you want to come to the United States, and you want to enter into a citizenship program. You enter into the citizenship program before you enter the United States, knowing that instead of 5 years, it's going to take 9 years. You get to come in, work for the harvest season, or work for whatever period of time, depending on what industry you're in. And then you get to return home to be with your family for a period of time. So you're not trying to smuggle yourself in and out of the nation, and you're not trying to smuggle your family in and out of the nation, which has only led to this explosion in human trafficking, which is, Human trafficking is modern day slavery. We forget about that. And when we design a system that encourages that, well, that's wrong. And I'm very proud that Donald Trump has done more to combat human trafficking than any president in my lifetime, or I think ever. So absolutely, we need to have immigration reform 100%.
As a retired Navy SEAL, when you read news stories that quote the president as saying those that tragically lost their lives, some of whom you served with, were suckers and losers, could I just get your response, sir? Do you believe those?
Let me ask you this question. The answer is no. But let me ask you this question. There are so many people in the media, and I sure hope that you're not one of them. And there's so many people in the general population that are repeatedly fooled by the same thing. How many times do anonymous sources need to be quoted something that is radically negative towards the president? How many anonymous sources said, wow, geez, Donald Trump went out and snuck out of the White House and paid for 800 people's mortgages because he loves them? No, you're never going to have an anonymous source in our media environment say anything positive about the president. That should be a clue to everybody. So when you can, in the Atlantic, let's be honest about the Atlantic. Look at their reporting. So no, I do not believe for a millisecond that Donald Trump said that. And I really wish people look at the Russian collusion thing. The FBI knew that was junk from the beginning. And the Comey report, or excuse me, the, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. Mueller, excuse me. The Mueller report showed that immediately. So no, I don't believe it. Okay. Donald Trump has done more for our veterans, which I am one. We just did a survey for the VA, 91% approval rating. Okay. I think that's the highest in history. So no, stop being fooled by the same stuff. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You guys repeatedly get bamboozled by the same MO by the left-wing media.
When I want to ask you about a press release from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, which says this is them saying that, not me.
Sure.
It's an incident of sexual harassment when you exposed your medical condition to the nurses when you were in the service. I just want to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, it's a lie.
Okay.
So, and let me explain to you why. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but does anybody really think that if I was doing what they said I was doing, that I would write that in a book and then publish it and distribute it around the world? That's just foolish. This shows that Ron Kind has no idea what it's like to be in the military. He has no idea what it's like to be in a scenario where someone is potentially in life or death situation. There's emergency room doctors there. There's corpsmen there. There's multiple nurses there. There was other platoon mates there, but you don't write that in a vignette. So they took that, and it was actually encouraging to me that they had to reach back. That was in 1999. They had to reach back and then twist everything around to try to do a hammer blow on me, which I think is number one, it's repugnant. Which really describes how Ron campaigns against people. And two, it's just a lie. But here's what's true. We don't have to twist any of these words. When Ron Kind was a prosecutor and he was getting ready to run for office, he declined to prosecute a woman who reported multiple sexual assaults by NFL football players in lacrosse. And he said that her credibility, because of her vocation, would be in question. So he declined to prosecute. Now you listen to this. This woman ran shrieking out of a dormitory, went immediately to her friend and told her what happened. Then they called the police that night. That's contemporaneous reporting. Ron decided to not prosecute her because he was going to be running for office and didn't want to have this incredibly horrible case hanging over his head. That is despicable. That is all public record. I don't have to make any of that stuff up. I don't have to twist any words. That's the reality of Ron Kind. Again, he continuously has put people in the 3rd district of the state of Wisconsin beneath his political aspirations and financial well-being. And I will never do that.
Okay. I realize you have a time commitment, so we have to end it there. Derrick Van Orden of Hager City is a Republican running in the 3rd Congressional District. Mr. Van Orden, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye, sir.
You know what? Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.